Of two. You've met Angela Masciulli already. One thing I failed to mention about Angela that her current title, eDiscovery Project Coordinator for Digital Paralegal Services LLC. That entails a lot, I'm sure. But we have a new panelist, a new presenter with us right now. Michelle Hess, all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. You arrived last night.
I did.
So we want to thank Michelle for coming out and sharing her experience with us today. Michelle is also another advanced certified paralegal in eDiscovery, or just ACP in general?
Just discovery and trial practice.
Okay. What is FCP? What is that?
That's a Florida certified paralegal,
Okay.
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give you the whole picture. Michelle is the paralegal manager for Louis Rothgerber and a graduate of the Master of Paralegal Studies program at George Washington University. Michelle received her Bachelor of Science in Legal Studies from Florida Gulf Coast University in 2012.
Wings up.
Yeah, it's a small world, huh? In 2000, she received her Associate of Science degree in Paralegal Studies from Hillsborough Community College, graduating with highest honors. She was named to the National Dean's List and is an alumna of Phi Theta Kappa. Michelle interned with the General Litigation Sole Practitioner in Tampa. Michelle achieved certified paralegal status through the National Association of Legal Assistants in 2001. She obtained the Advanced Certified Paralegal designation in Discovery in 2010 and Trial Practice in 2013. Michelle is also a certified Florida certified paralegal. When residing in Florida, she was among the first 100 to receive the Florida Registered Paralegal designation. Following graduation, Michelle worked with notable Florida law firms in various areas of litigation and trial practice, including commercial litigation, intellectual property litigation, media law, medical malpractice, nursing home litigation, with an emphasis on fraudulent corporate schemes and technology. Michelle has worked on arbitrations, mediations, and trials across the nation, gaining a wealth of practical experience. Michelle is a member of the National Association of Legal Assistants and is a former member of the Paralegal Association of Florida. She is the former web chairperson of PAF, Paralegal Association of Florida, and former second vice president and director for the Hillsborough County chapter. In fulfilling her duties, Michelle has spent much of her free time over the years networking with her peers, organizing continuing education events, thank you for being with us today, and planning projects for charitable causes. Michelle has lectured to paralegals on trial practices through the Institute of Paralegal Education. And with that, I'll give you Michelle and Angela.
So we're going to have Tony Harvin be the slide guy.
I'm going to be jumping back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm also documenting it via camera, so don't be put off by that.
So I really kind of envision this kind of being an informal kind of, you ask us what questions that you might have or think you might have on the job when it comes to incorporating a certain technology. And I created slides of the questions that were on the Eventbrite page that were just kind of topics, and I listed some bullet points that for me personally might come to mind in evaluating a technology. But I think we both would like for you to feel free to raise your hand at any time if you have any questions or you have any additional input or insight. So does that sound?
That sounds good
sound
to me.
good to you?
Yes.
Okay. All right, slide guy.
I think I do want to apologize for the length of my bio, though. I think that came from LinkedIn. That was quite long.
It's impressive, so, you know.
I usually submit something shorter.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Nia cannot be
Yeah.
with us today.
Yeah.
She just had a newborn.
Yeah, she did. But she was actually, if you were at our Paralegal Tech Talk event last year, she was on our panel. And she used to be a paralegal, and she's now an eDiscovery professional. And she worked for, I believe, a government agency and a large law firm, and has some great insight on how to incorporate law or skills to evaluate technology to incorporate into your business. We can circulate these slides, and I would highly suggest that you connect with her on LinkedIn if you have any additional questions. So what to look for in a product? Number one, I don't know. Go ahead, Michelle.
Well, one thing I would like to know for the people who do work in law firms right now, how many people use vendors exclusively, and how many people do some of their work or all of their work in-house? Or do you know?
It's a mix.
A mix? Okay. That's good to know, because when you're evaluating products, a lot of it depends on what you're going to do with it, whether you're going to actually purchase the software or if you're just going to do a project with that software through the vendor. So I was curious.
Yeah, I think actually some of the recent material that I have read is there's more of a trend of people trying to cut costs and go in-house and try to do it themselves, which is risky, less expensive. They're looking more at the cost savings maybe than maybe doing things as defensible as it could be done. And they like to be really hands-on. Oh yeah, I know, I'm losing my voice terribly.
Well, I think it also depends on the size of the firm. We do everything in-house, but we have built a nationally recognized eDiscovery team, and we are going to turn it into a profit center. So it's a little different than maybe a small law firm who's just trying to do it themselves to save costs.
A few of the things that I would consider as well, and you might have input on this, is lots of things are going mobile now. So the ability to be able to use, I think the whole idea of information not being secure in a mobile application, I think a lot of those fears are starting to go away, and the ease of use is kind of superseding any fears that people have about their data being secure in a mobile application. But I guess, you know, cost is always one of the big considerations. What is the budget for the case? What's the gravity of the case compared to what you want to spend? But also, what's your technical support going to be? What is the training that might be offered? Those are also really good things to consider for any new product or software.
Right, and budget, you mentioned budget. I find a lot of attorneys aren't budgeting for their cases, so that's a big problem. If you can encourage them to do so, I think it'll make a difference in how you assess software on the front end, and can potentially save your client costs on the at the end goal.
Right. So in talking to you, I think I remember you just said that your firm decided to bring everything in-house?
Yes, we have an eDiscovery team. Well, it's a litigation support team, but we focus on eDiscovery, and we're all, well, almost all of us. We've added a few new members. We're almost all trained at the Georgetown Institute on eDiscovery, the Georgetown Academy on eDiscovery, and we spend a lot of time traveling around and getting, you know, as much education as possible. Our eDiscovery partners are recognized leader in eDiscovery. We've made friends with some of the big names in eDiscovery. We're close to Michael Artfield, George Socha, people like that.
Craig Ball.
Yeah, we're close to Craig. We had Craig come to our firm and do a presentation.
If you ever have the opportunity to experience a webinar with Craig Ball, great wealth of knowledge, but entertaining as well.
And, yeah, he's very entertaining, and you can hire him to come, like we did, to do a presentation and training for your lawyers and paralegals.
Yeah, it was a
BALL. Yeah.
He's a great guy. But so anyway, we decided a few years ago, before one of our mergers, I think it was about 2011, that we were going to do this and we were going to do it right. We were going to build this team, bring it in-house, and that's what we've done. And we're happy with the result. Occasionally, we still, if we have a case that's terabytes upon terabytes of data, we'll send it out. But currently, out of all the cases we have 2 cases like that.
Okay. Yeah, I imagine if you have a wealth of medical records or something like that. And
Well, usually it would come into, it'd be in big securities cases, things like that. Yeah. Where we would have a lot of data, mostly big commercial litigation type things, sometimes IP cases.
Okay. Is there anybody that might have any questions about any of those features for what to look for in a product? Okay.
Well, I think the product needs to be as user-friendly as possible.
Oh, yeah.
Because one problem people had for years and years with concordance and summation was that they weren't user-friendly. And then,
especially.
and then once people did learn them, I've got paralegals who've been using them for 20 years who don't want to give it up because they did learn it.
Right.
And they don't want to learn something new.
Right.
So I think having a user-friendly platform that's requires minimal training is very important. Yes?
How do you test for that? So I think often the person that's making the decision with vendors is someone that's very well versed and probably sort of understands how the technology is supposed to work, and so something that's user friendly to that decision maker or someone who's vetting the vendors is different than what's user friendly to everyone else who needs to be brought on board. And so can you talk a little bit about how you sort of gather information there?
Sure, that's an excellent point. We use a test group. So we pick out a number of people at different levels of the firm and different jobs and have them test data. Test the products and then submit the data, and we review the data closely and analyze it and figure out what programs rate the highest.
I think keeping in mind long range how you're going to use a certain technology and how it could grow with you over time, kind of trying to anticipate, look at the typical amount of data that are in your cases. Will that technology be able to handle that? I am such a big picture person. Despite whatever I'm focusing on, I always try to keep that in mind in a bigger picture. So yeah. I think that would be helpful.
I think that's important too. You make an excellent point. One thing a lot of firms have bought a product, I'm not going to name any names here, but that I've heard about the last couple of years that's giving them some problems. And they're mostly smaller plaintiffs firms. And the paralegals will come up to me at these types of events and express their woes and want to know what they could do about it. And I think a lot of the issue was that nobody was tracking the data all along, so they didn't know how much data they were using on a typical basis or in a typical case. So I think it's very important to keep those metrics saved somewhere so you know when you're going to assess a product. Because a lot of people really have no idea.
Right. So we spoke briefly about relativity. I think that it's kind of one of the superstar top law firms, very expensive technology to be able to use. A lot of the large law firms do use it, but you go to, and it's also can be a regional thing, I've heard. A lot of government agencies have used concordance forever, and relativity, I believe, is based on concordance principles from my use of relativity and my knowledge of concordance. So one of the fundamental technologies that you can learn that is applicable across the board is concordance. It's still just like an industry favorite. Has that been your experience?
I think most firms are getting rid of it.
Yeah, it is older.
And I don't know if you're aware, but Concordance FYI just is going out of business. A firm we acquired as part of a merger recently had a lot of data in Concordance FYI, and so we're having to migrate it because they're going out of business. So I think, I would agree with you, that's true
I
with
think
relativity.
the principles
Yeah.
of building databases and loading data,
Yeah.
I think are pretty fundamental.
I think so too, but I think today the focus on analytics that is missing from that, and even relativity for me isn't on the cutting edge of the current analytics. But that's just an opinion of mine.
So I don't know if you understand what we say when we say analytics. When David talked about Netflix and being able to, from experience, kind of train it and find out some of the key words, some of the key issues, some of the key documents, that's what we mean when we say analytics. A logarithm, yeah.
Examples of that
Essentially,
would
yeah.
be email threading, concept searching. If you know what concept searching is, where you can search like an entire paragraph and
Right.
get similar results. Clustering.
Yes.
So products with those capabilities, especially when those products, those features are user friendly, I find the most beneficial. And don't get me wrong, I like relativity fine, but I just think there are some programs now that are a little more user friendly when it comes to the analytics.
Yeah, I'm sure our sponsors today will be able to show you some of the great ways that their analytics work.
Right.
Okay, you want to go on the next slide? Maybe? I'm more familiar with one than the other. How to choose a vendor. Oh, okay. Well, we kind of already talked about this in a way, and I'm sure you may cover this in your ethics presentation, but getting those ethical considerations out of the way at the head start of any choice of a vendor is just really the most important thing. You don't want to give them your data and be in the middle of processing and realize, oh, you're processing the other party's information too? That's bad. So you want to make sure you have a clear ethical pathway there, and that you're using a vendor where there's not going to be any questions where your data is going to be compromised. So.
Or you have waivers. There's case law that you can get waivers. I know of a number of cases where people have done that. We haven't had to do it personally, but it works fine, because most of I think when you get to the core of it, most of the vendors are not.
They're not
actually
saying they're
looking at
reading
the
your
data.
emails. Yes,
Yeah,
this is
reading the
true.
emails, right?
This is true.
So I get it. I think you're right. I think it's best if you can have separate vendors. But if everybody uses Evolver or Logical or Kroll, all the time, sometimes it's hard to.
And then you
especially if you have
large-
special pricing or something like that. You might not be able to get away from
And
it.
then you have like Iron Mountain, which is such a large national company that has real special training in getting that discrete information and backup tapes and things like that. Sometimes there are a few varieties of people that can do what you need them to do. So.
Yeah, that's true. And when I do work with vendors, I should say we use vendors for a number of other things besides our data processing. I mean, collection on phones, some forensic collection, expert testimony. That's something we rely on vendors for. But sometimes I look at where the vendor is for phones, especially because people don't want to send FedEx their phone to LA, and be without it for several days to have it imaged.
That's true.
So sometimes there are location considerations, or sometimes vendors will offer to fly to the person to do whatever you need them to do. I had a collection in Delaware on a computer with a virus, and it was somebody who had worked from home. And I think David might have covered this a little bit earlier about bring your own device kind of thing.
Yes.
He was working on a computer. He had a virus on it. Didn't want anybody to see what was on it. I'm not going to guess as to why. I think we all know why. But he said he had personal tax information on there that he didn't want anybody to see. But anyway, I had to have somebody who could drive out there. Because of the virus, you couldn't do a remote collection. So I had to use somebody. he was in Pennsylvania. I had to get somebody from Delaware to go there. So anyway, my point is there are a lot of considerations.
So when we say a remote collection, there is actually software such as, I know Logical can do that. Someone can give you access to their files on their computer and you can grab them and have them. So when we say remote collection, that's what we mean.
Yeah, and there's a couple of ways to do that. One is they can remote into your computer. Maybe some of you have had IT do that in the office or your software manufacturer. But also they can send a hard drive preloaded with software to the person's location if they have other
With
security
instructions.
concerns. With
This
instructions.
is how, this is how you do it.
And that works well if you want to collect the entire hard drive or maybe very specific folders.
So, yeah, I kind of think, what are some of the other vendors that you might use in addition to collection of data and expert testimony?
Well, definitely the big terabyte cases that we need superior project management for. I mean, our project managers are good, but you know what? Some of the project managers at the vendors, they're just great. They have the metrics down for everything and can keep track of things even better than we can on occasion for that. And then I was trying to think, sometimes third-party issues. If you need third-party access and you don't want to give access to your systems.
Right.
Although we do build firewalls and allow access here and there. If we have a case that has 10 attorneys that need access and they're all over the country, we'll use a vendor. I find
For
that's
like
easy.
an FTP site?
No, for software hosting.
Right.
Software. Yeah,
Okay.
we build our own FTPs, but for software hosting for sure.
Yeah.
And that way, all those attorneys can access the same data, or you can restrict areas of it. So, expert witnesses can access it. We do that sometimes, and that's actually the two cases we have with vendors right now. That's the case. They're huge data cases with a lot of attorneys from all over the country working on them. Definitely.
Right. So I think we might be ready for the next slide. Okay, so how to integrate a product. Probably the better one to talk about. I haven't educated big teams. But.
Yeah, well, we're still working on ours actually over time. We bought new software in May, and we were a concordant shop for a long time. And the other half of our firm from a big merger, 2013, was a summation shop.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And the summation shop relied on vendors. We didn't. So we've had a big integration going on over the last few years. And training everyone on the new software is an ongoing process. The first thing we did, we started with the software manufacturer, coming out to all of our offices and doing trainings. We also made videos of those trainings. They have some pre-made videos. We have reference guides just stored within the software, so anybody can access it in every case. It gets stored in there so you can access it easily. And then our project managers provide ongoing training. We do individual and group trainings. And then anyone new who comes on board, which happens rather frequently, gets the introduction training, and we train them over time on more complicated issues. The biggest challenge with that for me has been the TAR aspect of it, because it is a little more complicated than something people deal with on a daily basis. So we're working hard to train the attorneys and the paralegals on TAR.
That is
Yes.
How much overlap in the time between software programs? So if you're transitioning between two different software programs, do you go cold turkey? How much time do you plan for to keep both platforms running while you're transitioning?
Well, from day one, whatever day that is that we decide the rollout day is, the new software is used for all new cases. We also make a decision about which cases can be migrated. If it's a case that's been around for 4 years, no, probably not, unless there's a special need. Of course, it depends on the stage of the case as well. So we'll migrate a lot of cases, but we still have, here we are, almost a year later, and we probably have a couple of cases in the old software platforms, and that's about it. So I would say for us, it was probably around a year. I think as soon as these other 2 cases are finished, one of them's in arbitration right now. It's been going on for a few months, like on and off, and I think it has its last week coming up next month. That case will be over, and then the other one we may archive. But I think for us it was about a year. But we decided that we had to keep the old platform up, however long it took to service the needs of the attorneys with those cases that were already in there with so much coding and everything done.
Okay. Yeah, the time and the cost, and again, yeah.
With integrating and overlapping technologies, how do you handle resistance?
Well, that is hard. That is
point.
very hard. Luckily, the position I'm in as the paralegal manager, I can come in with my paralegals when they're getting resistance and try to force things a little bit. I know everybody doesn't have that luxury. I'm not going to say they listen to me 100% of the time either, but I'm a little bit more of a bully about it than my paralegals are, because I'm not afraid to. I can afford not to be afraid to do that a little bit. But at the same time, sometimes it's about not bullying, but just talking them into it a step at a time and just showing them one thing here and there. If you have a good platform to try, maybe put one case in there and then find some nifty features that work for that case and show it to them. I think that helps a lot. Sometimes those opportunities don't come up every day and right away, but I think be ready for them and pounce on them when they do, because it can help. I've had some really old school paper-oriented attorneys who paralegals have been working on for years to try to get them to do something. And one of them a while back was like, well, I need this PST open on my laptop. And I was like, absolutely not. You're not doing that. Yeah. And then as soon as I got it into the software and showed them, well, I didn't put it in, the analysts put it in, but they were like, wow, this is really great.
Right.
But it was, it's a battle. It's an ongoing battle. I've been fighting it for years, and I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon.
As a follow-up to that, it's also cost. So you create one tool now, and be it outside or utilizing something internally, however you want to use it. But what's the cost to the client as you bill on a monthly basis to utilize that tool? You may be going to a different tool that has a less expensive cost per megabyte or per processing or feature-rich functionality. So you have to look at it from a cost factor. So when the attorney says, "Oh, I like this," but yeah, but the client's going to be charged less per month if you put it in here because you're going to be able to do this, this, and this. That's really drives them. Most attorneys don't really care about the tool or associates with partners, but you can always go to partners and say, "Hey, look, it's going to save your client $100,000 a month less if you put it to the new tool." That's usually the moment before you can say, the end of the sentence.
So yeah, that's a great point. And it reminded me, was it Casey Flaherty who did that survey to outside counsel of their technology knowledge, and almost across the board, attorneys failed on their technology knowledge. And he brought up the fact that in-house, I've worked for big law, and I've also been on the other side and worked for an in-house counsel. And they're just, it's a great point that the in-house counsel is looking to cut costs, and they only see the bottom line, and they're not just signing the bills anymore. They're really examining them, and they want to really cut costs. And if you're doing something in an old process, they're not going to pay for that expensive, labored old process anymore. They want something, that's going to get the job done at the right price and efficiently. So,
But there are some clients that will not pay for software, period. We probably have 5 of them that I can think off the top of my head. And that's why sometimes having that mix that you said you have a mix is good, because you can either roll that off of the overhead on the inside and try to use vendors when you can, or not charge them at all if you have to do that. I mean, sometimes, I hate to say it, but it has to be done if the client just will not pay for it.
So every client that comes into a law firm, they usually sign an agreement. And a lot of those agreements come with outside counsel guidelines. And those outside counsel guidelines say what a paralegal rate can be, what an associate rate can be. That first year, second year, third years may not be even allowed to work on the project. And what they will and will not be able to pay for technology. So as paralegals, if you think you're going to go ahead and use this fancy new tool, you're better off first turning around and saying, can I look at the outside counsel guidelines? Because some associates says, what are you talking about? Your conflicts department in your firm will have the outside counsel guidelines. And it's usually on an intranet page or something like that. You can always download it, look at it, and make sure technology can be used. And if it can't be used, you need to have a good argument to the partner of why it should be used. Therefore, they can go to the client. A lot of times they'll turn around and say, it can't be used because Logical is our outside counsel's vendor of choice. Then you can't use your tool, you have to use Logical. You have to use this tool or that tool. So those are all the things that as a paralegal you need to understand from the bigger picture of before just jumping into a tool. But all the cost factors are relevant. So when you're making a choice of which tools to use, how to use it, and can you go from an present system to the new system. What happens if you're working for client A and you already have 3 matters, well, now you have a 4th matter. Well, 4th matter is going in the new tool, which is cheaper than the other ones. Well, all of a sudden that client's going to say, well, I want a discount. You need to be able to understand that and educate.
Yeah. Well, as a paralegal manager, I would stress too that you always need to understand the billing guidelines on every case.
yes.
And that if your attorneys aren't giving those to you, ask for them, because that's not good project management from a legal standpoint. But I would also say the right tool for the case is important. Mm-hmm. That is, I think it's critical, because some tools will work fine for an insurance defense case that will not work for a trade secret case.
Mm-hmm. 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 And sometimes I have a friend who their firm looked for an eDiscovery attorney for more than a year to head up kind of integrating new technology, and they could not find it. She volunteered to go to relativity training here, and she said, I can do this. So they elevated her career, sent her to the training to do it. So sometimes it's also a matter of having the right person to implement it and being that person to volunteer to do that. So I don't know how we're doing on time either.
20 more minutes.
Okay.
Actually, no, we go to a little bit of 1:20.
Okay.
So 10, 12 more minutes.
Okay.
Is that good?
I don't know how many more slides we have.
Oh, that's okay.
I think we're overlapping
I
too.
think we are, and some of this is actually going to come up in my
this is
presentation
this is the
later.
last
So
one.
I'll try to skip anything we've already talked
Yeah,
about,
actually
but I
this
don't
is
know.
our last slide.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If I will.
Resources for new technologies.
When you all had, when you were talking about it's going mobile and the cloud and stuff like that, with the new situation that's going on with Apple, how would that affect eDiscovery?
Are you talking about the government subpoena to Apple? Oh, okay. Hi. Well, that's an interesting question. For me. Do you want to take it, or do you want me to take it?
Oh,
okay.
I'm sure I could add to it, but you
Well,
can feel free.
Apple is going to fight to the death on that.
Yeah.
So, if they lose, I don't think it's going to have that much effect on us in civil litigation, especially. I mean, the government already can issue warrants for things and extend their arm a lot further than we can. We can't get cell phone tracking data and things that they already get. But I guess if you work in criminal law, then it's probably going to have some effect. But I think for most of us, it's going to be little to none.
Yeah, I think.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, on either side of the, whatever position that you're working from, plaintiff defense, clients are always happy when their information is more secure than not. So I think that that's always a concern. So if it is a situation where you can keep it secure, they're going to be happy about that.
Yes.
So, with the future being eDiscovery and everything online, how do you trying to formulate the question because
It's hard sometimes.
a lot of those clients that wanted the old way or the attorneys that preferred the old way, obviously at some point are going to have to transition over. So
One would think.
I just wanted to ask, like, what do you think the timeline of that is, and if that's gonna really affect?
When do they?
Well, I've been in eDiscovery since 2004, and I would have said back then, by 2008, especially after 2006, with the first rule changes, I would have said it would have happened in a few years, maybe a couple of years. But now that I've seen it not happen and not happen again and continue to not happen, I don't know that there is a point. And especially because with the new federal rule changes, the amended federal rules from December, it's interesting because especially on the preservation end, the threshold for sanctions is higher than it was before. So on the preservation, especially for spoliation, you have to have an extraordinary circumstance to even get a sanction. Plus, all these cases we talk about with sanctions for all these years that have been building up here, very few of them have been against the attorneys. And none of them have led to somebody being disbarred that I'm aware of or that anybody I know is aware of. So until there's some event that forces people to get really scared about it, the old school attorneys is what I like to call them, I don't know if there's going to be a change.
I'll speak to that. When I was still practicing, I worked in a community where there were Rule 11 sanctions against two particular attorneys for failure to disclose information. And it definitely got the entire bar of that community on heightened alert. These were prominent attorneys in our bar. Everyone knew them, everyone respected them, and they weren't disbarred, but it was a very public sanction. Everyone in the community knew this happened.
Yeah.
Prominent firm. Of course, the firm actually dissolved into they sort of got absorbed into several different firms after this happened. So there were serious impacts of it, and that prompted this community to then really educate themselves on the requirements of eDiscovery. So I think it really does go to Michelle's point that, I mean, if you work at a large law firm, you know that there's a word processing department, which means you have attorneys who are drafting briefs on legal pads of paper, right?
Right.
If we can't get them to word process on a computer, it takes a really high bar before they're going to migrate. So part of that, I think, is really ethics education for the attorneys. And at some point, there's only so much control we have as paralegals to keep pushing that, barring some kind of sad event.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And also I would add to that the state courts. What a lot of us forget about, we talk about this federal court level.
Yeah, California.
And California, I'm going to talk about that.
Opinion,
I'm going to talk about that in mine. But the state courts, a lot of them don't want to hear it. There are still some of them saying, hey, there's eDiscovery isn't evidence. We heard that in Colorado from somebody on the Rules Committee just a couple of years ago, probably 2 years ago.
I'll add to that too. I've been in this industry. I have a degree in Paralegals Studies. I've been in the eDiscovery environment since the 1980s. I'll just leave it at that. I've been around since the creation of paper. I've seen the evolution from paper to electronic to CDs or $600 a CD, when DVDs were $1,000 a DVD. And tiffing was just starting. So there are lawyers that I knew then that are still practicing today, doing the same thing that they did then,
Yep.
which is paper, paper, paper.
Yep.
As a paralegal, since this is a paralegal tech talk piece, as a paralegal, it is your responsibility to educate and to be educated on the process. You need to be better than the lawyer in understanding the rules, to understand the process, understand the technology, to guide them. Because those old school people are never going to change. When the federal rules came out in 2005, 2006, there must have been 100 lawyers that I was working for that says, today is my last day. I am leaving the practice. Because if I am made to do things electronically, I'm done. And a lot of them did. And when the new rules came out around just recently, there are more lawyers that said, if I'm really going to have to learn this, because the new rules say that lawyers cannot say, I'm stupid anymore.
Right.
They have to go to court and know what they're talking about. I'm not going to learn this. I'm stepping away. So it's really up to the paralegals to really educate the process and know what it is.
Yes.
But at what point does a paralegal go, because you said, excuse me, educating, what happens if the paralegal starts, what's that phrase, engaging in
Authorized.
practice of law.
Yes.
Well, if you're just talking to your attorney about it, you're not going to be
Yeah.
engaging in the UPL.
No.
So
But
beyond that, don't do it. Well, I mean, you can talk to the other paralegals, and if you work with more than one paralegal, I know some people just have one per firm or whatever. I mean, talk amongst yourselves, but I think the thing is to get as educated as possible and then try to convince the attorneys or help them over time. And whatever you do, as long as you're doing it responsibly and you're competent about it and working with the attorney, I think you'll be okay.
I think part of educating the attorney, like Bruce said, is being educated yourself. So attorneys are convinced by the law, right? So you can point to the rule or the case that sets forth what you're trying to educate, even if, you don't have to, you just hand them the citation and say, I'm concerned about this issue because of this. And it's not just you saying it in an office, but you actually show them the rule number or the case law. I mean, they're going to pay attention to that. They're going to pay more attention to that than you just saying, I'm uncomfortable with this because I sat in the CLE that said it. Give them a case citation, right? That's what they do for a living. That's how you're going to convince them.
And I mean, if you work for scary attorneys who won't listen and you don't want to do that kind of thing, maybe find another job. That's what I just say that because I know a lot of people do. They work for attorneys who will never listen. And if you're interested in this area and can't get somewhere with it, maybe that's not the right place.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. I have to say, because not all lawyers get a bad rap, right? Lawyers get a bad reputation, but not all lawyers are like that.
Right.
Not all. I worked for a lawyer like that when I was in law school, and it was hell.
Yeah.
I mean, working at that law firm was hell. And then when I left, I realized that it didn't have to be like that. Like, there were lawyers out there who were professional and competent and understood and treated me with respect. So, but if you only know a lawyer like that, if your boss is like that, you need to find it. And as paralegals, you have enough leverage. You're in enough demand. You don't have to work.
Especially with the skill set.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and honestly, I think those are probably like less than 10% of the lawyers that I know. So.
I only work for one.
Yeah.
Really bad. I work for a lot of lawyers, but only one.
What was really bad? Yeah, of course they all have their tempers and things that happen occasionally when they're stressed, but if you can't approach them like we were talking about, then you're not going to get anywhere either with this if this is what you want to do.
How are we on time?
Right on time.
We're right on time. Wow. Does anybody have any other questions? Yeah.
I don't have a question, but an experience to share, because I graduated a year ago from the paralegal program, not here, but at Georgetown. And 2 years ago, I had no idea what a vendor was or what any of this stuff was. And just last week, here I am recommending to one of the attorneys that we pick up some software because I used it for something they had asked me to do. So, to go back to what you were saying, certain attorneys are maybe stubborn, but for the most part, a lot of them are receptive to this kind of stuff as long as you're able to back it up with evidence that it's worth their while and the firm's while to invest in these kinds of software programs, stuff like that. And especially nowadays where we're young and used to like a lot of this technology stuff, so in my firm's case, a lot of that has been pushed to me because it's just more intuitive and easy to sort of test out and then to recommend to them. And so that's why now I'm finding myself having to make sort of pretty serious decisions when it comes to choosing which software to go with or which one, which contract not to renew. And yeah, I mean, it's real.
And you're putting yourself in a position where you're maybe the go-to person, and they feel, and that's a great place to be, and that's a place where you all should strive to be, because then that makes you valuable. And for me, I always strive to be valuable to my clients and have that customer service type mentality. That will give you a lot of success in your career.
I'll add one thing too. I mean, we see this with what we do, selling a software as a solution to law firms. You really just need one attorney to be an influencer to kind of push something along. So if you have 3 attorneys, you just need one of them to make your case. And that, as you go up in firm size, obviously it gets easier and easier. If you just have one attorney, to your point, that can be a little more tricky. But we see the same thing with our solution. One early adopter, they can kind of convince the rest. And that's, you want to kind of buddy up to a person like that to help push your agenda and your knowledge.
It is possible to use different
Yes. She wants to know if it's possible to use different products at the same time, different softwares. Do you want to take it or do you want to?
Oh, no, I mean,
you can go first.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to have different, especially you're going to have, let's say you do have relativity, but it might be too much. It can be very costly for every case. You might only use it for a case that has a lot of documents or things like that. But you have a case that's smaller that maybe you can use something like Logical or something that can help you just manage the smaller cases maybe. But yes, it's definitely possible to use different applications in one firm, but I don't know if I would recommend that in the same case. But
It's questionable because transcripts.
Yeah, it just depends on the data.
Logical, correct me if I'm wrong, but you don't handle transcripts. So you would use another tool, and there's a couple tools for transcript management. So then you would use Logical to review documents, then you would use a tool to use for your transcripts, and then you may use a third tool for case management to blend the two together. Then you could use a fourth tool for trial purposes.
Oh, sure.
And it all could be all the same case.
Right.
But you can be utilizing, you really just have to leverage the best technologies for what you're trying to achieve.
Right.
There's only a few out there, and you go back to summation.
Sanction.
At its heyday was one of the best tools out there because it did cover everything from transcripts all the way to trial.
Right.
Relativity is trying to get there. Recognize is kind of there. But you have core tools like a Logical and Accelerate like we have out there for Excel redaction of Excel spreadsheets. Those are unique things that you blend together to make one case management process for you from beginning to end.
That's true.
But if you're just talking about review platforms
right, yeah,
solely,
that's what I was kind of
and
thinking.
I agree with you completely there, obviously. But I would say I think a lot of it depends on how tech savvy you are and how good you are with software. Because some people in your firm may be great with it and can move seamlessly from platform to platform, whereas a big portion of your paralegals can't. They really need a lot of time to learn one program or two and stick with it. I think that's a big consideration. Of course, the user friendliness of that comes in as well, but
yeah,
there's a lot of consideration with that.
But yes, you would probably use absolutely right. In an individual case, you would probably use a number of different technologies overall, not just for a review platform to actually help you along the way with the case, from case map or sanction or a trial director, or maybe you'll only have electronic transcripts. Maybe you'll just conduct all of the depositions in a case via webcast through somebody like, I know there are a couple of companies that help you do that. So yeah, you would definitely use a number of different technologies across the expansion of an entire case.
I will caution to check your local rules on the transcripts though, because some state rules still require the original
official
transcript
to be the official.
and to be the official. And new paralegals may not know that or be
Sure.
told that, and it concerns me because I have seen somebody show up at trial
With the
without their
electronic.
original, and the judge. But Colorado just repealed that, but not any over the years. I'm sure that will probably get repealed, but it still holds true in a lot of states.
Okay.
And sorry, I wonder how is it charged, the applications, like per installation or?
I'm sorry? Oh, how much do they cost? Is that what
Or
you're
how are you charged? Gosh,
Oh,
it's
they're all-
it just depends on what you're
We
using.
could do a whole session just on that.
By users, by amount of data.
Just on the different
it's-
ways they charge.
Yeah.
I mean, we have, when vetting vendors, we usually have made a huge spreadsheet, and the analysis sometimes took weeks, just
Yeah.
because they charge based on different things, and a lot of times, in the end, it all comes out pretty close. But it looks different on the front when
Right,
you've got
right.
one has user fees, one doesn't have user
Yeah.
fees, one has big hosting fees, one doesn't has very low ones.
Some you can install internally and some have to be done on a
Right.
cloud.
Or some
That's
web-based,
defined as
right.
Private or public. You can go anywhere from single user license of $60 to install behind a firewall of $550,000. So it all depends on what your needs are, how sophisticated and where you want to put it, who's utilizing it, how it needs to be accessed. The cost factors are
Yeah.
close your eyes and
Numerous.
think about a number.
That's a good.
I can sell you a product for $1 million.
That's a good way to put it. Yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
The dealer says, how much do you want to spend? I want to spend $50,000. I got a car for you.
Yes.
Tell me what you want to spend. I can put your application through.
Right.
But I advise you. Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to say one other quick thing. If you're working on something small and you need something really expensive, look at Kelly Twigger's website of ESI attorneys. She's got a couple of good tools that are, will work for some needs.
I know Kelly.
You know Kelly? I love Kelly. We're pretty good friends. She was at ASU last week with us.
Oh,
Yeah.
she was. She
Yeah.
just premiered at ABA last year, I think,
Yeah.
in Chicago. Yeah.
But her ESI attorneys, it's out of Westminster, Colorado. They have some options, and one is on an iPad too, which is pretty cool.
That's what's big about her product.
Yeah.
Is that,
Sometimes she'll give you a demo, a copy for free too. She gives them away at certain events, which is fun.
Okay. Well, I hope this was helpful.